What's going on, everybody? Gunner here. I am in Mexico with Nomadic Waters fishing at the Anglers Inn Lodge, and that right there is sunrise on Lake Picachos. All right, guys, something I want to discuss in this episode of the Masterclass is just fly rod length for streamer applications. And what you have to understand is streamer applications is kind of a vague thing to talk about, because I could be talking about swinging flies, in which case we could be talking about 13-foot spay rods or 11-foot switch rods. So what I want to discuss real quick is going to be stillwater fishing from a boat versus wade fishing or river fishing from a drift boat, because they're going to be very different applications, and it's really just relative to rod length. So when you are fly casting and you're pivoting that rod back and forth and you're displacing it against the weight of your fly line, understand that the longer the rod is, you've increased the leverage that the fly line has on the tip. So as you displace that, the longer rod, it has more fatiguing effect and it requires more muscle to snap that and cast it properly as the longer it gets. That's why for overhead casting, basically rods are 9 foot. And that's a really great length to fatigue ratio. Seems like a weird comparison, but it is. And so understand that as a fly rod gets shorter, it becomes less and less fatiguing. And as it gets longer, it becomes more and more fatiguing. But there's different applications here, because as I talked about, if you are in a boat fishing stillwater, understand that you are on an elevated platform. You're standing on a boat above the water. So I don't need to carry line above the water. I'm in a pretty advantageous position. I also am not going to be mending, more or less, because I'm fishing a stillwater situation. I might have to flick something over a tree, but I'm not going to be mending. I'm not going to be roll casting. I'm going to be more or less straight line distance fly casting. A short, less fatiguing rod is going to be optimal for full day performance. I absolutely love St. Croix's Mojo Bass Fly. It's one of my all-time favorite streamer rods. You need to contrast that with river fishing, especially wade fishing, where there might be a ton of roll casting. You also need to compare that with fishing from a drift boat, banging the banks. A few things happen when you fish from a drift boat. One, you mend a lot. You might switch mend, you might just reposition mend. You also have to pick up at distance. Maybe you slap it down, you don't like the cast, you rip it back up from 40 feet away. That 9-foot rod is going to be able to pick that line up way farther than a 7'6" or 7'11" rod will be able to do. It's also going to be more efficient in creating a larger D for roll casting when wade fishing. So those are the very two simple lengths. Basically, you're looking at 8 foot and under is for efficiency and less fatigue. And then you got that 9-foot range, which is your all-around performance for your kind of go-to river rods. Obviously, I'm not kind of talking about creek fishing. I tend to fish very small rods for creek fishing, like a 7 foot or a 6'6", like a 2-weight or a 3 or 4 weight. And that's designed for under canopy fishing, because you're under trees. If you had a 9 foot, you'd be hitting branches, right? So you have these really small rods for actually fan casting, being able to false cast under a tree canopy. And then you also have your kind of 10-foot rods. Those are going to be very common for stillwater, but those are more dry fly oriented. You're not shooting to distance, you're carrying to distance, usually small dry flies or nymphs. And so you have that 10-foot length to carry longer belly fly lines more accurately at distance, not really applicable to streamer fishing. And then if you're a truly dominant roll casting situation, mid-sized river, wadeable, overgrown banks like what I have in Minnesota, you move to more like an 11-foot switch, or you move to a 9-foot single hand trout space setup where you're using basically water line, water tension casting techniques and relative to fly line or fly rod length for D-loop position and being able to get that out. So I hope that helps you out as far as your rod length selection for your given application, whether you're fishing a drift boat, more like a 9-foot, whether you're wade fishing with moderate roll cast or longer line pickups, fishing that 9-foot rod, or you're fishing exclusively stillwater boat, angler, warm water angler, lake fishing like we are here in Mexico, dropping down to that 7.6, 7.11, those bass, that's the classic like St. Croix bass, right? It's the most perfect kind of stillwater streamer application rod as far as being less fatigued. So I hope that helps you out and your fly rod selection for streamer fishing, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. For 3 days? 3 days. Look at this casting. Did you see that? Did you? We're talking 55, 60 feet, glass, no problem, with a cross breeze, boot control, everything. I was born for this, man. Oh, and fish slash snags on demand.